The Obama administration is getting ready for its next move in the crisis in Egypt. The White House says it wants to help bring about democracy in the country.
The United States isn't moving fast enough as far as the protesters in Egypt are concerned, and David Brody has the story.
The situation in Egypt has been tense, angry, and violent now for 18 long days. But some Middle East analysts worry that if Hosni Mubarak doesn't resign soon, it could go from bad to worse.
Once this man leaves, we will calm down and we'll take the next step.
But Mubarak says he'll go in September, not now, and that's led to more fury and anger.
It's not enough! Not enough! Not enough! Go out! Go out!
In another setback for protesters, the Egyptian military says they back Mubarak's plan to stay until September, at least for now. And Mubarak says foreign powers will not force him out, a veiled reference to the United States. All of this has put the Obama administration in a position of trying to figure out the next step.
We're going to have to wait and see what's going on.
President Obama says he wants the Egyptian government to put forward a credible, concrete, and unequivocal path towards genuine democracy. But that has not been good enough for those fighting against Mubarak's regime.
America, where is America now? America should stand with us, should support us, not support the government.
Mohammed El-Baradei, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2005 and could play a major role in any new Egyptian government, also criticized the Obama administration's handling of the crisis. He wrote in a New York Times editorial today that, quote, "It would be absurd to continue to tacitly endorse the rule of a regime that has lost its own people's trust." On Capitol Hill, another problem for this administration. The director of national intelligence told Congress that the Muslim Brotherhood group in Egypt is largely secular, even though the Muslim Brotherhood has long claimed that their goal is to establish an Islamic state.
The term Muslim Brotherhood is an umbrella term for a variety of movements. In the case of Egypt, a very heterogeneous group, largely secular, which has eschewed violence and has decried al-Qaeda as a perversion of Islam.
The administration later clarified those remarks, saying the Muslim Brotherhood is actually not a secular organization, yet it's just another fire to put out in a very combustible situation. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Well, CBN's international correspondent George Thomas is here with us, and George, we just heard it. I mean, here's James Clapper. He's the director of national intelligence, and I'm telling you, he's sounding stupid.
To put it lightly.
I mean, it's just incredible to say that the Muslim Brotherhood is a secular organization.
Let me tell you this, Gordon. Yesterday was a bad day for the Obama administration. Moments after we got rumors on television that Mubarak was going to step down, there was going to be a big announcement. In Capitol Hill, in our nation's capital, Leon Panetta, the man who holds the secrets of America, he's the head of the CIA, he makes a statement, not in a closed-door session, Gordon, with the president or with members on the Hill. He makes a public announcement that we may see Hosni Mubarak step down. This is a man who has been our ally for 30 years. He makes a statement on national television, the head of the CIA, that Hosni Mubarak is going to step down. 2 hours later, the President of the United States steps up to the podium at a university in Michigan and in essence says to the crowd and to the entire world, incidentally, in a dictatorial country, you don't get beamed into the country foreign television. President Obama appeared live on Egyptian state television, where he proclaimed on Egyptian state television at the university in Michigan that today was a historic day. An historic moment was unfolding. Everybody in Washington expected that Hosni Mubarak was going to step down yesterday. In my estimate, Mubarak, in essence, snookered the United States and this administration. They have no idea what's going on.
But why would he do that? I mean, you know, I would assume the head of the CIA and the President of the United States would, before they make statements like this, obviously knowing the historical impact of them, as well as the impact, if you're on state television in Egypt, what are people in Egypt going to assume is getting ready to happen? We all assumed it. I mean, I recall yesterday waiting for the speech from Mubarak and thinking, you know, this is an historic event, and then He does a 180.
I think in some ways you can look at his speech yesterday evening and basically said, look, we are not going to listen to demands of foreign agitators. In that you could make the reference to the U.S. administration, to foreign satellite televisions. Look, this is a country, people need to realize that this is a country that has been ruled by the military, in essence, for 60+ years. Hosni Mubarak is a general of the Air Force. The man that he has appointed, Omar Suleiman, is a general, a man of the military. What happened yesterday, I would call a soft military coup. These are men who are in civilian clothes, but in essence, the military has taken over. From the U.S. perspective, Gordon, this is good. Why? Because for 30 years, the men in our military at the Pentagon have had an intimate relationship with the folks, the Egyptian army. We've been giving them $2 billion+ per year for the last 30 years. We know the men and women who are in command of the Egyptian army. We have good contacts. So from our perspective, sitting here in Washington, D.C., this is a good option. Let the military men, in essence, take over the transitional period, bring all order and stability. 6,000 miles away from Washington, D.C., on the streets of Cairo, Hosni Mubarak, Omar Suleiman, in essence, are the same face of this dictatorial regime, and they want a complete sweep of this entire regime. They don't want any elements of the Mubarak regime that has, in essence, held an iron fist over this nation for 30 years. They want them all gone.
All right, well, let's just get back to the snookered part. Yeah. Why is it in Mubarak's interest to do that?
The very nature of a dictator, you don't want to lose power. The military, as I said, is in command of this country. They have lucrative business ventures. They don't want to overnight, in essence, give up the business ventures.
Since Sadat was assassinated, and by the way, he was assassinated by the Muslim Brotherhood. So to say that's a peaceful organization
is ridiculous.
And so you've been in power. I would understand why you'd want to stay. You're dictator for life. And if you think if you step down, what's waiting me? Is it prison? Is it some kind of war crimes trial? What is it? Am I going to be held accountable for all the police atrocities? And so you'd understand that. But why would you send a message to Washington and to the protesters, get ready, there's a big speech coming, and you get the CIA and the president out there saying he's going to step down?
I mean,
why?
I just, that's the $1 million question. I don't know. I mean, I think perhaps that at the last moment he figured that this is not the way I want to leave this country. This is not part of my legacy. As he said to the people yesterday, look, folks, I'm like your father. When he took to that speech yesterday on television, he said, I'm like your father. You are my children. I have taken care of you all these years. He has sacrificed his life in essence. And in essence, he's saying that I'm going to spill my blood on the streets of Cairo for you. And this is the predicament, Gordon, that the intelligence community today finds itself. I just cannot believe that we as a nation, we've got all of this human intelligence around the world, all of this technology and the ability to eavesdrop and so, but we do not know, we cannot with one voice be able to speak a clarion message. And yet the United States president gets on television, the CIA director gets on television, in essence saying he's stepping down. And then all of a sudden he says...
What about this play? Mubarak is trying to play the anti-American card, that America wants me to step down, and I'll get them out front on that. And then I'll come and say, no, I'm going to resist what America wants me to do.
You know, you've got a street that is primarily, the staggering thing about Egypt and pretty much much of the Middle East, you've got 65 to 75% of Egyptians today who are under the age of 25. In some of the other Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Yemen, you've got a massive population that is under the age of 25 to 35. They have access to Facebook. Do you know between the dates of January 17th and January 25th, 5 million Egyptians signed up on Facebook. They are connected to the outside world. And this idea, they've got access to 24-hour satellite channels. This idea that the Americans are somehow trying to bring us down in the regime is not. The boogeyman is not the United States or the Muslim Brotherhood. To the thousands of people who are gathered on Tahrir Square, Mubarak. Hosni
What's
Mubarak
next
is
for
the
these
man.
protesters? Are we going to see the army step in just as the army stepped in Iran with those protests?
I think the key is the army today. The army, in essence, said what Mubarak said yesterday. We are following. Our orders are that you need to leave and go home. We need to come back to life as normal in Egypt. I heard today that the protests have now moved from Tahrir Square to the Egyptian state television. They've surrounded the Egyptian state television. Thousands of people are now moving to the presidential palace. So before, for 18 days, it was all Tahrir Square. Now you've got two other major pivotal points in the life of Egypt: the Egyptian state television, in essence, the propaganda arm of the regime, and the Palestinian and the Egyptian palace. And so the key is, we don't know if there are fractures emerging within the military. Those who are in the war cabinet, the generals, the vice president, the prime minister, they're all yes sir to Mubarak. Those who are the enlisted men, these guys who are on the streets of Cairo, hundreds of military men who are guarding the streets, and they're in the tanks.
Do you think they'll pull the trigger?
I don't know, because you know why? In Egypt, every person has to be part of the military. At some point, they have to serve. So you've got brothers and sisters, mums and dads, who are serving in the Egyptian military. These guys walk the streets, and they recognize their cousin, their brother, their sister, who is serving in the military. And so for these guys to pull the trigger, if the order does come, because there is, in essence, a confrontation coming between the military and the army. And are these folks, in essence, going to pull the first trigger? And boy, we don't know.
All right. Pray for the peace of Egypt. Wouldn't it be great if there were a new democracy to rise there? And I think that's a goal that we can all get behind and say, yes, let there be peace there. Let there be democracy. Let there be freedom there. Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories from the CBN Newsroom. Lee?
Gordon, French President Nicolas Sarkozy says multiculturalism is a failure. Sarkozy says it's important to respect cultural differences, but he believes that France should be a place with a national community, not a place where different cultural communities just coexist. Sarkozy's comments echo those of other European leaders, including Germany's Angela Merkel and British Prime Minister David Cameron. In a few moments, we will have an exclusive CBN News report on the problems of multiculturalism in Europe. Well, imagine going to church and being told to take money out of the offering plate instead of putting it in. Well, that was the case for about 700 members of Freedom Church in Atlanta. When the plates were passed, churchgoers received an envelope of cash. But there was a catch.
One person in this worship experience will also receive an envelope with $1,000 inside. Now, here's what to do with the money, because you don't get to keep it.
Big shock. I had one of the $1,000 envelopes to do something within my community for someone else. Talk about pressure.
That's right. Members had to agree to bless others with that money. Overall, the church gave out $10,000, and one of those blessed in the community was a husband who had just lost his job and had medical bills piling up. What if you're a Catholic and want to go to confession but can't make it to a church? Well, now there's an app for that. You can download to your portable device something called Confession, a Roman Catholic application. In less than 2 weeks on the market, the app has become a hit. It's among the 100 most popular Apple downloads. A three-man company in Indiana created it.
And we thought, this will be neat, and maybe Apple will approve it. And, Apple did approve it. Well, that's great. Maybe some youth groups will be interested in it. And, here we are like a week and a half later, and, you're talking to international press. This is not our normal week at all.
There were some reports that the Vatican approved the app, but the Catholic Church says it is no substitute for confession. And, quote, under no circumstance is it possible to confess by iPhone. What will they think of next, Gordon?
Well, the American Catholic Church actually did approve it, and so that I guess they didn't check with Rome before they issued that. One of the I think cool things about this is the app walks you through the 10 Commandments and asks some probing questions. Have you violated this commandment today? And I remember Bill Bright, the wonderful head of Campus Crusade. He said, that he and his wife every night would get together and they'd review the day and then review the Ten Commandments. And if they had in any way violated them, they would confess that to one another. And that's a good thing to do. I think, you know, to realign yourself with that, you know, pole star of the Ten Commandments on a daily basis is not a bad thing.
Hawaii's House of Representatives will continue to open its daily sessions with prayer. Last month, the state Senate there voted to cancel the opening invocation after the ACLU questioned the practice. The House passed rules to ensure that prayers can mention a deity or God, but it cannot be critical of other religions. Operation Blessing teamed up with Extreme Makeover Home Edition here in Virginia Beach, Virginia last week. This week, an extreme makeover of another kind in Peru. Operation Blessing staffers worked with volunteers from a church in Peru to build homes for impoverished families. They were able to build 7 houses in one day. Most of the families were living in homes made of unstable materials like straw and plastic sheeting. The new homes are made of wood and will be able to keep out bad weather and wild animals. One woman said it was the first time in 62 years that she had something that was hers. You can find out more about Operation Blessing by going to its website at ob.org.